The United States is reportedly preparing to freeze green card processing for applicants from 75 countries starting next week. If this policy goes into effect as currently described, families could be separated, job offers withdrawn, and long-planned immigration journeys abruptly put on hold. In this video, I'll explain exactly what this proposed freeze means, who is affected, who is not, and what practical steps you can take right now so you can understand your options instead of just feeling afraid. Welcome to Immigration News Alert. If you or someone you love is in the middle of an immigration process, this update is especially important for you. Make sure you're subscribed and have notifications turned on so you don't miss future changes, because what I'm about to break down could significantly impact your plans. Here's what is being reported. The U.S. State Department has announced that, effective January 21, 2026, it plans to pause immigrant visa processing for applicants from 75 different countries. This pause would apply to immigrant visas handled through U.S. embassies and consulates abroad, essentially, green card cases processed outside the United States. According to statements cited in major media and on official social media channels, the government says this step is necessary to protect American taxpayers from immigrants who might become a public charge, meaning individuals who could need certain forms of government assistance after arriving in the U.S. This is being presented as a temporary but indefinite pause while procedures are reassessed. If this policy is implemented as described, it would be a major shift. It is not just a paperwork delay. It could mean spouses, children, parents, and siblings forced to remain apart for months or even years. It could mean employers losing workers they have already sponsored and invested in. For many, it would mean years of planning, saving, and waiting suddenly thrown into uncertainty, with no clear end date. That is why it's critical to understand exactly who is covered by this proposed freeze and who is not. The reported list of 75 affected countries spans every region of the world. Examples mentioned so far include Afghanistan, Albania, Algeria, Antigua and Barbuda, the Bahamas, Barbados, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Brazil, Cambodia, Cameroon, Cuba, Egypt, Georgia, Ghana, Grenada, Jamaica, Jordan, Kuwait, Lebanon, Liberia, Montenegro, Mongolia, Moldova, Morocco, Nicaragua, Nigeria, Pakistan, the Republic of the Congo, Russia, Rwanda, St. Lucia, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Senegal, Somalia, Syria, Thailand, Uganda, and many others. If you, a family member, or an employee is from one of these countries and is currently in the process of applying for an immigrant visa, a green card, through a U.S. embassy or consulate, your case could be placed on hold once the pause begins. The categories most directly affected are family-based immigrant visas, employment-based immigrant visas, and diversity visa (DV) lottery immigrant visas for nationals of the listed countries. So, if you are trying to bring in a spouse, child, parent, or sibling from one of these countries, their immigrant visa case may be frozen. If you have a job offer in the U.S. and are going through consular processing for an employment-based green card, that case could also be stopped. DV lottery winners from these countries who have not yet completed their immigrant visa process would likely be paused as well. Some conditional green card holders who are outside the U.S. and going through consular processing to remove conditions could also be affected, depending on their specific situation. Equally important is understanding who is not currently included in this proposed freeze. Based on the information available, non-immigrant visas, such as tourist visas B1, B2, student visas F1, and many business or temporary work visas are not part of this pause. People who are already inside the United States and applying for a green card through adjustment of status are, for now, also not directly included. And if you already have an immigrant visa stamped in your passport, you should still be able to travel, although you should confirm with your specific embassy or consulate. Remember, however, that immigration policies can change quickly, and what is not affected yet could still be impacted by future rules, so you must keep checking official sources. To understand the government's justification, we need to look at the public charge rule. This concept has long existed in U.S. immigration law. When you sponsor someone for a green card, you typically sign an affidavit of support and must show that you have enough income or assets so the immigrant is unlikely to become dependent on certain government benefits. What is different now is the scale of how that rule is being used. Instead of evaluating applicants individually, the government is proposing to temporarily halt immigrant visas from entire countries that they say have high rates of public benefits usage among immigrants. Officials argue that they need time to redesign screening to ensure that new arrivals will not become a financial burden or extract wealth from Americans. Critics, including many immigration advocates and legal experts, call this a serious overreach. They argue that using public charge concerns to justify pausing whole categories of immigrants based on nationality unfairly targets certain regions, often countries with large populations of color, and punishes people who have followed every rule for years. They warn that this could separate families, harm businesses that rely on global talent, and damage the United States' long-standing image as a nation of immigrants. Opponents also point out that similar broad restrictions in the past have been challenged and sometimes blocked by the courts. This is not the first time we've seen a large-scale halt in visa processing. Many of you will remember that during the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020, most visa services around the world were suspended, officially for public health reasons. Millions of people saw their plans delayed or canceled, and the backlogs created then are still being cleared. The current situation is different in its legal justification, but the real-world effect, a sudden stop to processing for huge groups of applicants, could feel very similar to those who are caught in the middle. So what does this actually mean for your case if you are from one of the listed 75 countries? If the pause takes effect on January 21, 2026, new immigrant visas for nationals of those countries will not be issued until the government announces that the freeze is lifted. Interviews scheduled after that date may be canceled or postponed. Cases already in the queue at embassies and consulates may simply sit in pending status without movement until further guidance is given. There are still many open questions. Will there be exceptions for immediate relatives of U.S. citizens, for medical emergencies or urgent humanitarian situations? Could the list of countries change over time? And how quickly will lawsuits be filed to challenge this policy in court? At this stage, we don't have final answers, only indications that legal challenges are very likely. If you think you might be affected, the most important advice is do not panic, but do get organized. Panicking leads to rushed decisions and makes you a target for scams. Instead, carefully gather and organize all of your immigration documents, receipts, notices, and correspondence in one secure place. If you already work with an immigration attorney, update them on your situation and ask how this policy might impact your case. Do not make major moves without professional guidance. Closely monitor official announcements from the U.S. State Department, USCIS, and your local embassy or consulate, and rely on reputable immigration news sources for explanations of those updates. You should also be extremely cautious about scams. When there is fear and confusion, dishonest people appear offering shortcuts or special connections that do not exist. No one can legitimately sell you an interview slot or bypass an official pause on immigrant visa processing. Only trust information from government websites and licensed attorneys, and be careful about anyone who pressures you to send money quickly. Even if your category is not directly included in the freeze, you should expect longer processing times and more scrutiny, because a major policy change of this size often creates delays across the system. If you are already inside the United States on a valid status and your priority date is current, one potential option to discuss with a lawyer is adjustment of status from within the country instead of consular processing abroad. That won't be possible for everyone, and the rules are complex, so do not assume it applies to you without proper legal advice. But in some situations, shifting your process inside the U.S. could reduce your exposure to consular processing freezes like the one being discussed now. Looking at the bigger picture, this proposed freeze appears to be part of a wider trend towards stricter immigration enforcement and narrower legal immigration pathways. In recent years, we've seen increased use of the public charge rule, tougher scrutiny at consulates, and more talk in political circles about reducing overall immigration numbers. Supporters of this new policy say it is necessary to protect taxpayers and ensure that immigrants are self-sufficient. Opponents say it is discriminatory, economically short-sighted, and inconsistent with American values. The final outcome will likely be shaped not only by politics and public opinion, but also by how federal courts interpret the law once lawsuits are filed. To quickly summarize, the U.S. government has indicated that starting January 21, 2026, it intends to pause immigrant visa processing for applicants from 75 countries. The freeze would primarily affect family-based, employment-based, and diversity visa immigrant cases at U.S. embassies and consulates abroad. Non-immigrant visas and many people adjusting status inside the U.S. are not currently included, but everyone should expect some level of disruption. The official justification is to prevent new immigrants from becoming a public charge, but there are many unanswered questions about exceptions, timelines, and legal challenges. If this information is relevant to you, please remember, do not panic. Stay informed, stay organized, and seek qualified legal advice where possible. Policies can change, courts can intervene, and pauses can eventually be lifted. In the meantime, we will continue to follow every development closely. If you found this breakdown helpful, subscribe to Immigration News Alert, turn on notifications, and share this video with anyone whose immigration plans might be affected. You are not alone in this. Millions of people are in the same situation, and staying informed is your best tool for protecting your future.